What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back. In this new series, we're going to talk about the Vienna game or Vienna Gambit. I have broken it down into 10 different sections. The first two, we're going to talk about some of the sidelines and the main variation, which is pawn to d5. And then I'm going to show you plenty of games so that you can understand some of the ideas with more explanations. If you find value in this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And let's get started. We're going to start with pawn to e4. As an e4 player, you're going to see this move, pawn to e5, probably 50% of the time. The other 50%, you're probably going to see moves like c5, playing the Sicilian defense. You might even see c6, which is the Caracan defense, the French defense, which is e6, or the Alex defense, which is knight to f6. But, like we said, most of the time, you're going to be facing this setup here. Most players playing with the black pieces here are going to be expecting you to play knight to f3, but we're going to surprise them with another move. Instead of knight to f3, we're going to play knight to c3. We're protecting this pawn and we're hitting the square on d5 in a lot of situations. Now, the main continuation here is knight to f6. All other moves look kind of weird. At least this knight is putting some pressure here on e4, and this bishop is ready to come out and black is ready to castle. But here we're going to surprise them again, and we're going to hit them with pawn to f4, and this is the Vienna Gambit. Now, in this part of the video, of the 10 video series, we're going to discuss the sidelines of the Vienna Gambit. We're not going to discuss the main line. The main line is pawn to d5, and we're going to save that one for the second video. So let's first discuss what happens if black decides to just take this pawn on f4. Huge blunder right off the bat here. What we're going to do is play pawn to e5, hitting the knight. Notice that this knight doesn't have any squares. So the only way for this knight to go is backwards. And here we're just going to hit them with d4. Look how strong our center is already. Most players have to continue with pawn to d6. They want us to take so that they can recapture with the bishop, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to develop another piece, protect our pawn here, and after their take, instead of recapturing with a knight or the pawn, we're going to play this move, queen to e2. A very tricky move. The pawn is pinned, so he cannot take us. Obviously, the queen is not going to take on d4 because we capture with the knight. So they have to do something. Now, how to continue the game from here? We're going to take this pawn with our knight on the next move. We're also going to, after that, capture this pawn on f4 with our bishop. And we're going to castle queenside. So that's more or less how the game is going to develop from here. So going back a few moves, let's say our opponent does not recapture the pawn here on f4. What's another move that they can play? Well, they can try knight to c6 here, but this is a really bad move as well. We're going to capture on e5, and after the knight captures, we're going to hit them with the pawn to d4, and after the knight goes to g6, again, we're going to hit them with pawn to e5. This knight, again, doesn't have a lot of squares. It has to retreat back to g8. And here, we're just going to develop our pieces. We're going to go knight to f3. Next, we're going to go either bishop to d3 or bishop to c4, putting pressure here on f7. We're going to castle our king. After we castle our king, there's going to be ideas of knight to g5. Again, putting more pressure on f7. Remember, this bishop is going to come out to c4. So imagine all these pieces. When we castle, our rook is going to be here on the f file. It's going to be 3 pieces going towards f7. Not to mention, the queen can come to f3. Join the party here on f7. We're going to cash in very quickly if our opponent decides to go for this variation. So again, let's go back. Knight c6 doesn't work. Pawn takes on f4 doesn't work. So what else can black do here? Well, they can try pawn to d6. And out of the variations that we have discussed so far, this one makes a lot more sense. If we capture now on e5, they're going to capture back, and this bishop is going to have the c5 square available. And since we weaken the dark squares, black is going to have a good position. So we're not going to capture the pawn on e5. Instead, we're going to continue to develop our pieces. We're going to play knight to f3, continue to put pressure here on the pawn on e5. If they decide to capture our pawn, again, we're going to play d4, take control of the center, and on the next move, we're going to capture the pawn on f4 with our bishop. We're going to have a really good position. So they're not likely going to capture here. Another possibility for them in this position is to go bishop to g4. I don't like this move, and the main reason for it is that we are going to either win a pawn or get the bishop pair. The way we're going to do that is by playing pawn to h3. If the bishop goes to h5, well, it's a trap bishop. After g4, the bishop goes to g6, we play f5, and we win the bishop. So that's probably not going to be the move. So after h3, they're going to capture here on f3, and we're going to take with the queen. And notice that now we have the bishop pair. We have good control of the center. Once this game opens up, we're going to have a really good position with the possibility of attacking the king. Let's say our opponent doesn't capture a knight after we play h3. Let's say they go back with the bishop to a square like e6, for example. Then he loses this pawn. We just take, and after take, we take with the knight, and we're going to be up a pawn. So that's why I'm saying that once this bishop comes to g4, they're either going to trap the bishop by going to h5, g6, or they're going to have to trade it here on f3, in which case we're going to have the bishop pair and a really good game. So this is not going to happen. So let's say if instead of bishop to g4, they decide to play another move. Let's say knight to from b to d7. Here we're just going to continue by developing our pieces. We're going to bring our bishop out here to c4. Notice again, the same idea is to put pressure on the pawn on f7. Guess what's going to happen next? The main threat is to go knight to g5, and there's going to be no good way for him to protect this pawn here on f7. So right now in this position, there's only one move that they have to do in order to prevent that, and that's to go pawn to h6. And this is for a more advanced topic, but this move is really not good. The reason for that is that at some point, this tension here with these two pawns is going to resolve. And this bishop is going to have a very good diagonal to attack this pawn. So imagine a situation in which this pawn comes to h4, g4, g5, in preparation with the bishop here, or let's say we take the bishop out to e3 in some cases. This is very dangerous for black to do, to push this pawn here, especially if they're planning to castle to the king side. If they somehow manage to castle queenside, then that's not a problem. But notice that doing that is not very easy. This bishop has to move, the queen has to move, and then they have to castle. Before they can do all of that, we're also going to play some moves in order to prevent that. So preventing this knight to g5 with h6 is also beneficial for us. We're just going to castle here. The next move, we're going to play e3, prepare to obviously take here on f4 with our bishop, if that's the case. So knight to d7, it's a little weird move, and black really doesn't have a good position after we end up in this situation. So what else can black do here? Well, they can go for knight to c6, and the same thing. We're going to develop our bishop to c4, same thing, putting pressure on f7, same ideas. The knight's going to go here. Obviously now it's a little different because this bishop can actually come to this square to challenge our bishop on c4, but that's not a problem. If they were to go for this, notice that they're going to have a really terrible pawn structure. For example, we take here, and after knight takes, look at these two pawns. We're just going to castle on the next move, and as the game progresses, we'll be able to put pressure on these two pawns and win the game that way. If you like the video, if you found value in it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.